Friday night. Well, more accurately, it's the Friday afternoon, to be quite honest with you, because it is a 12:30 kick-off. And because it's the biggest game of our lives, it is Manchester City versus Liverpool. I've got John Gibbons, I've got Andy Heaton, I've got Josh Williams. And I'll start with you, Josh, really. One of my markers for the season, little thoughts that I have when fixture lists come out, was if the City game at this point of the season feels massive, it'll mean that we've done well. And I think that has got to be the starting point for Liverpool in every single sense going into this one. This one matters as much as it does because Liverpool have put themselves in a position to make it matter.
Yeah, and it feels weird going into it because, you know, I've said a few times on podcasts so far this season that I find it difficult to judge so far just where Liverpool are at in terms of the level and stuff. And I think this is kind of the ultimate marker, really, isn't it? The ultimate gauge of where we're at facing treble winners away from home. I'm a big fan of the fact that it's away from home first as well, because then if it is a title decided later in the season, it's at Anfield for once. It feels like they're always at the Etihad. But yeah, massive game going into it, and I'm just looking forward to getting a gauge on Liverpool's level and seeing if we can compete with a team who are probably the best in the world at the minute.
Yeah, it's a good point on the way the fixtures have fell, because those years where it was tight and it was only a point between the teams, we had the home ones first, and I think drew them both. And there was one in particular, a very cagey one, where you just felt they were sussing each other. They actually miss a pen later, just get a pen out of nowhere and miss it, but then they win the game at home and then pip us to the title. And when it is that tight, and listen, we don't know how tight it's going to be come the end of the season, but if it is that tight again, you are looking at these games and thinking, well, is that where, you know, they took 4 points from us both those seasons and beat us by a point. So it's hard not to look at those games really and think what could have been. So the other way might help, and your reasoning is right, Neil, and I was pleased you said that, because it was a reminder to me, and I'm sure a few people watching, that we would have took this, absolutely would have took this in August, sort of going into, you know, remember Avon and I on the game and maybe talking about it on a show or whatever it was, saying like, you know, if that feels like a big game, then we're doing all right, because you know City are going to be there, you know they're going to be there because they always are. But for us, you know, we've been obviously hot and cold over the last sort of 5-6 years, and so this feels like a warm one at the moment. We can't say it's hot yet, like Josh says. We can't predict a hot Liverpool spring, but it's warming up. The forecast looking good.
There's something with it where it's still important that it's enjoyed, and I think there'll be a lot of people. One of the things that's hard about playing City is there'll be at least 15 minutes where you watch your football team suffer like nothing on earth. Every single time we play them, that happens. When we played them, when we beat them, that happens. When we played them, when I think we played the better football, that happens. We've got through European games and there was 45 minutes of it, not just 15 minutes of it. That's going to happen, Andy. So you've got to almost budget that in. But we've still got to keep enjoying this. The manager wanted us to enjoy it at the start of the season, enjoy it in every single aspect. That goes for tomorrow as well.
You know what? I'm more relaxed about this game than I have for any other game this season. Strangely, I think because we've managed to get ourselves in this position, I felt far more stressed about the Luton game. I felt far more stressed about every other game leading into this, because it's got us to this place where we are now.
Yeah.
And you know, we can go there. I think you're right. The enjoyment factor of it, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the game, which I've not looked forward to City away for a while. Whether it's because it's been that end of the season where it is all death or glory or whatever, or we've just fell away like last season, and you know, you just know you're on a hide into nothing. And I hope, you know, the squad are feeling that as well. Just go out there and play your football. We're at a level now where, I mean, look, City are excellent. I said that on the show you on the Bacon Butty on Monday, didn't I? They're fantastic. So all they can do is turn up, play their own football, and see what happens, and just not make any daft mistakes. I think the worst thing that Liverpool could do going into this is feel the pressure, if you will. I mean, I remember you last season saying the scoreboard pressure and Liverpool starting games 1-0 down. You know, City have shown this year that they've lost 2 games. They could have lost 3. And when they've been beaten, they haven't just been beaten, they've been deservedly beaten.
Yeah. I
mean, we've dropped a couple of points where we shouldn't have done, but they look, I wouldn't say vulnerable, but they look like they've got the chin might be a little bit more vulnerable this year, and they showed that in the Chelsea game. It's the first time the Chelsea 4-4 was a funny one, because the cards kind of felt like they were going in City's way, and so many times City get an inch and they take a mile.
Well, they led 3 times in the game, exactly, Andy, and you know, we've all been there where City scored, you just turn the telly off, don't you? Do you know what I mean? Whereas, yeah.
But even when they were in the ascendancy, Chelsea always looked like they had something in it, and I've not seen that in this City side for a while. Oh, granted, it was at Stamford Bridge. But, you know, I'd like to think they're feeling more stressed about the fixture than us, if that makes sense. Yeah. Because they're expected to win. You know, everything they've done last year. Whereas Liverpool, to be honest, Liverpool turn up there and get a draw. Happy days. I mean, I'd love a win.
We all love a win.
But a draw keeps the pressure firmly that way.
I think on the idea of where Liverpool are, before talking about where City's chin is, Josh, do that in the second part. I think there's a little thing where we've had to show, away at Newcastle, away at Tottenham, even for extended periods away at Chelsea, we've had to show a lot of resilience in those games. Playing with 10, playing even at Tottenham with 9. And that's one of the really odd things that actually gives me a bit of confidence going into the game, because there will be at least 15 minutes of Liverpool having to defend their own penalty area for their lives. That is the way it always goes. There's no answer to that. That's the way in which it'll be. And I think that resilience is one of the things that makes me feel as though Liverpool can get a result in the game.
Yeah, well, one of the best traits I felt of the original Klopp team was just the team was so difficult to actually beat. Over a long period of time, like you're talking like 3 seasons, we lost very, very few games. And I think this team now, it's very early to be saying this, but so far, we look similar in terms of like, we've lost twice in all competitions all season. Once was in a game that didn't overly matter considering we're virtually qualified in the Europa League. And the other one was when we had 9 men and we scored the decisive goal ourselves with John Matter putting the ball in his own net. So, in comparison to City, as you say, looking a bit more shaky compared to previous seasons. Liverpool look a bit more, as you say, resilient, you know, really difficult to beat, capable of really grinding when necessary. I think we've got the players to adapt depending on the match scenario and stuff like that. And it's going to be really interesting to see how this kind of new group of players, you know, completely new midfield department, which, you know, Guardiola's accustomed to facing a really dogged, disciplined Liverpool midfield, and I think this midfield is a lot more technical, a lot more attack-minded compared to previous years. How will that kind of add to the dynamic of the game? There's so many unanswered questions going into this match, but as you say, Liverpool just looking really resilient lately. We're going to have to dig in to get a result in this game, even if it's just a draw. And I think we've got the players to do it.
And there's something, to be fair, even to last season's side, the game at Anfield, when, by the way, he plays 4-4-2, and I'm going to keep saying this in all the shows I do around this, he plays 4-4-2 in that one. He's gone to the Etihad before and played 4-4-2.
He plays Jota wide left, doesn't he? He's great.
Plays Jota wide left, plays Elliott wide right, and there was a lot of people, I think when the team sheet came, it was when Elliott was finding it, everyone felt increasingly difficult. Elliott's excellent wide right over the course of the match. But again, one of the things that happens though is that, well, everyone knows, I think it's a really interesting thing, John, that Liverpool, you're not used to thinking we're going to suffer. And you don't want to see Liverpool suffer, but I think there's almost something that's bought into the idea of playing Manchester City for everyone. I think it happens to Arsenal earlier in the campaign for the first 20 minutes, half an hour, but they're almost like, yeah, there's going to be 20 minutes or half an hour in this game, but it's going to be really hard for us. I think the idea of there's a period of time where, yeah, you're going to have to suffer, it's just the price of admission. If you want to play them, that's the way it's going to be, and I think it almost clarifies the team's thoughts. Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
It does, yeah, and I think the team looked to me like they've enjoyed defending this year, which is a positive. And I think, you know, Virgil, you know, as the captain in particular, sort of led by, you know, example on that. It's great that Canate seems to be fit again. He was in training the other day, because that's great, because, you know, I think you guys, as many of them as you could pick as possible, who were just like, I'm just here to just, nothing's going past me, no one's going past me, and I'm going to try everything I can, you know, to get a clean sheet for Liverpool today. I think the more of them you can have in your team, and the better. But in terms of suffering, like, it can be on the ball as well, and last year we just couldn't get out. And I think, you know, what I'll be looking for, you know, I'm going to the game, and from the stands, you know, what I'll be looking for is how do we cope with their press, because they're a horrible team to play against. Yeah. As well with the ball, and people, you know, often say with City the quality is, you know, and talk about how good they are sort of with the ball, but off the ball as well. When they want to be, and very much against Liverpool, they always want to be. You know, led by Bernardo Silva, who I think I must have had a season in the Gladys Street, or when he was a kid or something, and no one's picking up on it. But I think we just couldn't get out last time, and that's a big test of whoever it is who plays left back. But also sort of defenders still tested. There's players who've gone there who I thought had a good technique and have, but you know, you're looking at them thinking, actually, this has been really challenging now, and I'm not sure this player is technically quite as good as what I thought he was, and so that's
Thiago, who's got the best technique you've ever seen, had a 45 minutes there where nothing worked for him. And then the semi-final the week after, he looked absolutely brilliant against them. But I think it is its own test, isn't it, John? That's my point. It is its own unique test in loads of ways, especially. And I think we're a unique test for them in a load of ways. Let me be clear. But I think it is its own unique test, and I think that the players have to have that mindset if they're going to get a result. Yeah,
100%. Because you know, there's no time to get used to it. You can't say, oh, you know, I've not had this for a while or before or since last year. And you know, you can come out second half and deal with it better, but you could be 2 or 3-0 down or whatever, or they've shut off the game. So it is going to be really, really tough for them. But listen, we can make it tough for them as well, and I think that was the point that Josh was making, is that you know, you can talk yourself into you know, a really hard afternoon, which is sort of what I've ended up doing there. But or you can say, well, hang on, if we got the other way, you can really hurt them and make it really tough for them, you know, going the other way and turning them around.
With Erdinger, we're in the Red Lion. It's a pleasure to be here on this Friday afternoon. I'm so excited for Saturday's game. It is absolutely ridiculous. We'll be back in a second to talk about who we've got the other way to turn them round, and Andy can talk about chins.
And Erdinger, please.
Stop!
Don't forget the best bit.
Delighted to be in the Red Lions, delighted to be on the Erdinger, having a fantastic little Friday afternoon. Talk to me about this chin then. Where do you think Liverpool, what did you see in that Chelsea game? Because I saw a thing or two that was quite interesting. I thought that, you know, there's a Manchester City there that didn't look as strong, anywhere near as controlled as we've seen under normal circumstances.
Well, they looked rattled. But just before we get into that, just at the end of the first part, then we mentioned Thiago there last season and comparing the two games. What I'd say, and this is why Liverpool have to be relaxed. I will get to my point. Have to be going there with feeling as little pressure as possible. What City are brilliant at is the greatest smelling blood in the water, like the weakest member of the party. So if one particular player is having a tough one, they're absolutely brilliant at focusing on that and turning them around. And we've all seen games of football there where a player's having a bad game and then it sees the partner and just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And then that disrupts everything. And if you go there with all that pressure on, then, you know, you show them any weakness, that will inevitably happen. Saying that, you mentioned the Chelsea game. I don't think that I've ever seen City look as unsure. Because I think they expected, and I think it's a lesson taken to the game, once they went ahead, first time, the second time was John said, even the third time, they expected Chelsea to fold. And they didn't. And how many times have we seen it over the years where City it'll be 0-0 on 60, 65, City will get one and then end up getting 4 and 5 because the team's going, oh, that's it, they've gone ahead now. And it almost surprised them that Chelsea kind of went, nah, actually, we're going to see this out to the death. And I think with this midfield that Liverpool have got now, and listen, Jordan Henderson, Fabinho been fantastic servants for Liverpool, what they've done. There was a really interesting quote from Andros Townsend earlier in the week about this Liverpool. I know we drew it, Luton, but he was saying, like, the old Liverpool, I don't know if you've seen this quote, he was saying that they had a certain way where they're very much happy to keep the ball and play it on the break. And he said, this Liverpool, and he mentioned McAllister as outstanding. He said, they'll take it all over the pitch.
He looked goose when he went off the pitch. I thought he played well. And fair play to him. He seems like a nice fella, but I thought he looked knackered when he come off, like me and Melwood yesterday.
Well, that's what he was saying. They'll drag it all over the pitch.
Yeah, he looked like he was dragged all over the pitch.
Dragged all over the pitch and play the game. And I suppose being reactive, Liverpool play the game on their own terms now, and I think that's massive going into the weekend that Liverpool do that.
On their own terms, I think what Chelsea do on their own terms, which is dead interesting, Josh, is they run at them. And I was struck by the fact that firstly, how often do you see people genuinely run at City? But also, secondly, that City were a bit like, what on earth do you think you're doing here?
Yeah.
They couldn't cope with the direct ball carrying, which I think is really interesting. You know, there was space to carry the ball in too direct. So it wasn't even just the idea of going past people. But at times, they were prepared to run quite directly into people's zones almost and say, all right, this is now a duel and we're backing ourselves that we're going to come out the other side of this. And that's something which, it suddenly made me think, for 15 minutes, half an hour, with subs, without subs from the start, make a change. But Liverpool have got players who could really run at Manchester City. They've got players in almost every position who could really run at Manchester City. And that made me think, that could really be a way home.
Yeah, I mean, going back to that suffering comment that you made about, like, you know, Liverpool not having the ball as much as usual. This feels like the one game on the calendar where Klopp can kind of be vintage Klopp in many ways, in terms of going back to his heritage almost, in terms of like conceding possession, playing on the break, focusing on pressing as a means of creating chances. And again, if you look at the players Liverpool have got, specifically when it comes to carrying the ball over them large distances that you say, even the likes of like adding Gravenberch to the mix, Szoboszlai, it feels like we've got a few of the Oxlade-Chamberlain from a few years ago at the Etihad. You know, that kind of profile that we had, where he kind of offered like he was almost like a vehicle between the midfield and the forward line. We've got a few of them players now who can really cope on their own, carry us up the field. Gakpo's another one of them. Nunes is rapid in behind. So it feels like Liverpool can maybe go into this game and be like proper transition Liverpool, roll back the years a little bit, allow them to have the ball and almost force them into a mistake a little bit. And I think you've got to add elements of what Chelsea did in terms of just making the game a little bit chaotic. I think City are just masters of being in control at all times. You have to disrupt that somehow, you have to be brave. It's not easy, but that's usually how they end up dropping points when they're not in total control.
That's why I'd be tempted to pick Gravenberch, and listen, it's going to be tough who he picks, and it's a nice problem to have in midfield because of the ones who could be fit. Obviously there's a couple long term, the ones who could be fit look like they are, so I think a good player is going to miss out. But the reason I'd be really tempted to pick Gravenberch is exactly what you say, because they're on your touch, but Gravenberch's first touch takes it away.
Yeah.
And I've seen it.
It's like Lallana, isn't it?
Yeah.
On the move and that.
Yeah, I've watched games from sort of different places, and I was in the Cop for one game watching Gravenberch, and I was just so impressed with him just from watching him from behind, because you're watching him receiving the ball and then he's just boom, his first touch is taking it into the space away. And you know, we talk about the pressing, I was talking about the pressing, but we've seen it when someone beats the press, the space there, isn't it? And he's the kind of player, like you say, Josh, who can do that, who can you know, so suddenly he looks in trouble, and then suddenly, you know, they've committed into a press, he's sort of turned them, and then suddenly it opens it up, and you've got players like him and Szoboszlai who are able to sort of carry it and move forward. And so there is opportunities there because of the way they play, if you've got the right players. Last year we didn't have the midfielders who were either fit or in form or capable of sort of doing it. This year we have. I'd love to find a way to pick Gravenberch and Jones, but I can't get it right in my head. So I think only one of them's going to be able to play, which is a little bit of a shame, because obviously you want to play Szoboszlai, and I don't think either of them, I think picking one of them two as a six in this game feels a little bit wild even for me, and so I don't think he'll sort of do that. But either of the two of them are sort of very press resistant, but that ability that Gravenberch's got to not just keep it but actually take it away from someone with his first touch, I think could be massive in this.
There's talk of being disruptive and Liverpool being disruptive. I'd love to see, and I wish I thought ahead of this, Trent's not pass back per se, but who he actually passes to this season compared to last season, because it felt like times last season we all know what he can do with the ball, but it was either going to Robertson or he was trying to get Salah in. Now this is only with what I've seen with my own eyes, so it could be wrong, but it's exactly what you were saying about the dynamism of the midfield. There's two big words in 30 seconds, well done Andy. And the amount of time he's fizzed it to Szoboszlai, or he's hit Gravenberch, or Darwin, who looks a lot more settled this year. I'd just love to see a little breakdown of the percentages of the spread, if you will, now, because I think that could be massive on Saturday in executing that plan.
What I think is interesting, Josh, is sitting here thinking, you know, I've spent years watching Jurgen Klopp. I know this Liverpool side. I'd like to think I know it inside and out. Maybe I don't. I think it's quite difficult to really predict a lineup. I think it's almost difficult to predict a shape. And I think if you're Guardiola, you know, I think there's a little bit of that's difficult for City. And also as part of that, what that also means is that if we think that the players who we think are fit at the time of recording this, then there's also a little thing here as well, which if you are Guardiola, you've got another problem, which is Liverpool will have more options than you probably have on 55, 60 to change it from one thing to another, whatever that may be. And to me, that is, you know, in loads of ways, this is Liverpool's way home. If Klopp wants to make it chaotic from minute one, he can do that. If he wants to set up to be pretty solid and then have options, he can do that. If he wants to say, you know what we're going to try and do is, I'm almost going to do a 45-45, he can do that. Do you know what I mean? He can say to certain players, you're just going to get the first half, so you need to give me 90 minutes running in 45.
Or even 60-30.
Or yes, 60-30 or 60-40 as it becomes. Cause my point, Josh, is that to me, it's often felt like Guardiola's got cards to play in this fixture. I actually think he doesn't have anywhere near as many because of a couple of injury issues.
Got like called Bob on the bench.
Yeah, he's got like called Bob.
And Bob might be great. And Bob might come on and score the winner. And if he does fit, I'll hold my hands up to you, Bob.
Yeah,
but
you buy him an Erdinger.
It does feel like they've just gone, we need another player for the bench, and someone's gone, Bob's all right.
He came on against Wolves to try and solve a problem for them, and Wolves won. Is what I would point out. But that's my point, is that we've got those options there in a way that they haven't. I couldn't tell you what his lineup's going to be. I genuinely couldn't. In that I think there's a chance Elliott starts, and people might, if they see that team sheet, there'll be some people going, I can't believe he's done that. But Elliott starts in the 1-0 last season, and he goes 4-4-2. My point here is that I think if you're, and John just said before, he can't pick between Gravenberch and Jones. He might start neither of them if he starts Elliott. That's where Klopp is, and that's why I think it's a hard game for Guardiola.
Yeah, and this is why I think it's the most interesting game of the season every year, because there's just so many unanswered questions going into the game in terms of lineups, shapes, tactical questions and things like that. There's so many different ways Liverpool can play compared to usual, and the same goes for City. You know, we know Guardiola's got this kind of overthinking tag. I think a lot of that stems from games against Liverpool, specifically in Europe and things. But I couldn't tell you whether he might reuse that 4-4-2 little wild card that he's used a few times at the Etihad. I think there's a question mark as to whether Nunes or Gakpo will start, considering Nunes has started the last three. Nunes looks like the player in form. He's also coming back from South America though, and he's also got that kind of defensive, not weakness, because I think he's working on that, but in comparison to Gakpo.
On the South America thing, in a really weird way, I think it gives us another wild card in terms of them being able to guess. If this was next weekend, listen, I think if this was next weekend, I think Nunes would definitely start, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
But I think though, if this was next weekend, they'd be able to look at the last team, be able to look at the subs and probably have a better sense of what it is we're going to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Whereas at the minute, I feel as though all bets are off. Yeah. He hasn't got any data to guess from. He can't go, he did this and he did that with the subs, etc., and feel like we'll get 9 right and maybe 10 right and 1 wrong. I think in a really weird way, the idea that Liverpool could decide that none of the South Americans start is something that Guardiola would be going, oh God, he's gone with none of them for this reason. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I also think from Pep's perspective as well, like previous years, we know he's virtually the best out there when it comes to targeting your weakness, highlighting it and making it look really bad. And I think in previous seasons, he's tried to do that a lot with Trent in particular. To be fair to Trent, he's done relatively well at times, specifically against like Leroy Sané and that. But in this game, it's difficult to even determine what Pep is going to identify as the weak point of Liverpool, because obviously Tsimikas is playing a little bit more than he's ever done for Liverpool. And you've got McAllister there in the Guardiola spot, the spot that Guardiola values is really, really important, and he played as a player. He's going to recognise that Liverpool don't have a natural in that position, could overload McAllister with 2 players or something like that, which is a bit of a concern for me. But
what if Liverpool wanted to do that?
Why would they want that?
Basically commit, just backing up what Neil was saying about a bit of trust in McAllister to deal with it, and then suddenly you break that press.
It's McAllister versus Alvarez, which strikes me as really interesting, because Alvarez has been so important for them in that little area, doing a couple of people's running for them. But McAllister knows Alvarez, he knows him inside out. Now, the flip side of it is Alvarez knows McAllister inside out. But that's what struck me, is that the clear player to do that. And I just sort of wondered if, Klopp might feel like, I'll back Alexis to sort out Alvarez.
He might. This is another one of the really interesting points attached to the game, but I think McAllister, I think he's done really well this season, don't get me wrong, but I do think he's quite clearly learning a relatively new spot for him in terms of like getting to grips with being the deepest player, getting to grips with being maybe the most defensive player out of the trident, or out of the 4 if you're including Trent.
He worries me on the ball, McAllister, in this one. He's the one who I think is most likely to get caught on it. So he does, but I don't see who else he play.
I think I have more of a concern when it comes to if City have the ball. and maybe someone like a Gravenberch and a Szoboszlai get caught a little bit higher, maybe pressing or whatever, and you've got McAllister on the zone with 2 number 10s around him, and he's not the quickest. He gets yellow cards, you know, things like that is what I'm a little bit worried about. But Guardiola might go for the flanks. He might use Doku against Trent and just kind of do what he's done in the past previous years. But
my guess is he might start Doku and Grealish left and Doku right, and go that way. That's what I think he might do.
Doku against Newcastle.
Yeah, or Doku, whoever's left back.
Gomez has got a shout for this game, I think, as well. Because obviously we don't need the full-backs to overlap necessarily as much as previous seasons, as previous games, because I think we're going to attack on the transition mostly. We're not going to have to break down the block, are we? So we're not going to need width as much.
You excited? You're going.
I am excited, yeah. I feel like every result's possible, which is nerve-wracking, but it's also exciting. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I wish it was a little bit later, but it is 12:30. And it's not Video Connor's fault.
It's not Video Connor's fault. But he's got enough to deal with at the minute. He's got a lot going on, you know, all that sort of stuff. Be excited. That's my key message. The Anfield Wrap. Everything you need before the game, everything you need after the game. We're there, we're in the Red Lion, but we're excited because that's the thing to be.